Nintendo made a decision that looked completely insane. At a time when Microsoft and Sony were spending billions building more powerful consoles, Nintendo intentionally built a weaker one. Not a slightly weaker, much weaker. Experts criticized it, gamers laughed at it, and by all logic, Nintendo should have lost, but they didn't, because they understood something about customers that most businesses still don't. And once you see it, you will start noticing it everywhere. Back in mid 2000, the console had became an enormous race. Sony was preparing the PlayStation 3, Microsoft had Xbox 360. Everyone was competing on the same thing: better graphics, faster processors, more power. And if you ask anyone back then who would win, the answer seemed obvious: the company with the strangest hardware, which makes what Nintendo did next even more surprising, because instead of joining the race, they quietly walked away from it. Nintendo introduced the Wii, and honestly, on paper, it looked outdated. Its hardware wasn't even close to PlayStation 3. It wasn't trying to impress hardcore gamers, which raised the obvious question: if Nintendo wasn't competing on power, what exactly were they competing on? The answer had nothing to do with technology, and everything to do with is how people behave. Nintendo realized something most companies overlook: most people aren't enthusiasts. Most people doesn't spend hours comparing specifications. They simply want something enjoyable, something easy, something they can share with families and friends. And that's exactly why we offered. Suddenly, grandparents were poly, parents were playing tennis, kids were jumping around the living room. Nintendo wasn't selling the hardware, they were selling an experience. And that simple shift changes everything. But here's the really interesting part: Nintendo isn't the only company that figured this out. Look at Apple. For years, competitors have phones with bigger numbers, more megapixels, more RAM, more features. Yet, millions of people still choose the iPhone. Why? Because people don't experience specifications. They experience products. And Netflix discovered the same thing. People didn't switch because streaming was technically revolutionary. Switch it because it was easier. No more late fee, no driving to Blockbuster. Just press play. Different industries, but the same pattern. And once you notice it, you start seeing another mistakes companies make. Most companies believe customers want more features, more option, more complexity. But this often wrong, because customers don't buy complexity, they buy simplicity, they buy convenience, they buy emotions, which explain why a weaker console sold over 100 million units, and why being better doesn't always mean winning. So here is something worth thinking about. When was the last time you chose the technically best product? And when was the last time you chose the product that simply felt better to use? Because those are usually not the same thing. And maybe that's the lesson Nintendo understood all along. People don't always want the best technology. They want the best experience. And if you are building a business, the difference is changing everything.